Hi, everyone. Are we on fumes yet? We all right? Okay. So I want this to be, I know last time I did this, we were in roundtables last year, so it was could be more interactive. So I'm going to try to make this as interactive as possible. And if you're kind of a lone wolf and don't want to interact with yourself. So like I can't make you talk to anyone, and that's okay. So this is a really interesting topic, finding your voice in conflict. And you'll see the art of the assistant coach up there. If you're not an assistant coach, it's okay. This is going to be very applicable, hopefully. But I also wanted to make it clear that if you start hearing me maybe address some of the assistant coaches, that's because that's for this diploma. So if you're confused by that, but stay if you're not an assistant coach. You probably were an assistant at some point. So today in the session, really what I want to talk about conflict within your soccer teams, or what is it in a soccer context. Why do many of us attempt to avoid conflict? Keys to having a fierce conversation, providing you with a 1-minute opening statement that is really helpful. And you guys are going to be doing some role playing, which is always really fun. So I want to give more time for that. You will have access to these PowerPoints. So, I mean, if you want to take pictures of them because you're an instant gratification person, go for it. It's okay. But if you want them, I know, there we go. Thank you. If it's something you want, gang, I tell you this all the time and people don't believe me, but if you email me, I will create like a Dropbox for you and give you the information you want. You all are on the front lines. I've stolen information from people and twisted it and turned it to make it mine. You can take my stuff and twist it and turn it to make it yours. So we need to keep, you all are the ones touching and hitting all the players. Touching and hitting all the players. Don't quote that. Don't. Do not, I hope no one was recording that. That can go viral. Okay, so anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So let's dive into some of this whole conflict stuff. I love this. Truth sounds like hate to those who hate the truth. So a lot of times we avoid conflict, or what is even conflict, but here's the thing, gang. If you are part of a team, conflict is inevitable. If it's healthy. If you have a team who actually is going to be high functioning, you are going to have conflict. But my thing, conflict is healthy. Conflict happens within the first 24 hours that something goes on or people get upset with each other or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, conflict is a healthy part of being part of a team. Drama, on the other hand, is negative and can completely destroy a team culture and thus performance. And drama occurs when people aren't having either the conversation with themselves or with the person, coach, player, teammate, or team directly with that party. Then it becomes drama. Or when we start talking to other people about something that happens, and not directly to the source, that is when drama ensues. So I'm always telling players, hey, you got 24 hours. If it's still stuck in your craw, or a coach, if it's still stuck in your craw, you better address it, or this is just going to fester. And then it's going to be drama, and then I don't play with that. Okay? I think everyone's like, you just love drama. No, I don't at all. Conflict doesn't faze me, but drama, hate. We all been there, right? How many of you have had issues because drama has ensued? Yeah, exactly. And for some of you in here, the drama, and it might be with a colleague, it might be with a fellow coach, it might be with a player, with your team, with a parent. When that happens, like, it could be career ending, depending on the support of your administration, if you're a college coach, or the support of your head coach, depending on how that is. I've seen this drama fester and actually cost people jobs. Not to scare anyone, but there it is. You're going to hear me talk a lot about fierce conversations. I've read a lot of leadership books. I've read a lot of conversation, or how to have conversation or communication. And the best way is Susan Scott's book, Fierce Conversation. And yes, she's a William Smith alum, as am I, but that's not why I'm pushing it. It's just it's happenstance. I love this because fierce doesn't mean that I'm going to go and punch you out. Some people are like, well, can we change the word fierce? No, it's fierce conversation. Susan Scott came up with it. We're staying with fierce. Why are we afraid with fierce? And everyone's like, I feel like it's going to be a battle. Well, sometimes it's not a battle, but it's hard, and we do go back and forth talking. And so fierce conversation is the only risk that you will have, if you have one, is that you may reveal yourself, and you will have to be vulnerable and reveal yourself to the other party. Fierce conversations aren't really happening. We don't model them. We don't model them for our players. Why not? What is inhibiting us a lot of times for having conversation? Yeah, yes, so in the back. Okay, yes, yes, there's all these reasons why we don't have fierce conversations, but really what is inhibiting us from being good at even having conversations? Okay, hurt feelings. Okay, I'll let you keep doing this. All right, don't want to hurt feelings. Yep. They're hard, yes. They come back to you, yep. What else?
We don't want to expose ourselves.
Yep, we don't want to reveal ourselves. We don't want to be vulnerable. And honestly, as we start talking about this, a lot of times the issue is actually with ourselves. It's easier to blame other people than to look within and say, you know what, my real issue right now is with myself. I'm the one that isn't fit. I'm the one that didn't work really hard. So I'm actually jealous that that player is playing. It's not that player's fault. It's my fault because deep down I know I didn't do the work that I needed to do in order to play. But it's going to be a lot easier for me to lash out at you and blame you and try to have that kind of conversation with you than it is to ultimately have that conversation with myself. But I'll tell you why we're really not good at this. We communicate all day long, every day. It is not about communication. Communication is not conversation. So I have a story. I was working with a pretty high-level D1 volleyball team, and I'm working. I had worked with the team, so a player goes, do you mind if I reach out? I'm having an issue with one of my teammates, and I think I want it to be healthy, and I know you'll shoot me straight. Sure. So she tells me the story, and really at the end of the day, they were in strength and conditioning, and one of the players did this and put her hands on her knees, and that's a no-no from the strength coach, and so one of the players is like, hey, hands off your knees, and she kept doing it, and this player who's not someone, if you were at the disc, she's an S on the disc profile, so you know it's very hard for her to call somebody out and say, get your hands off your knees, and the player basically goes, F you, the full thing. Finally tells her to do that. So I said, well, have you addressed it with her? Did you say, hey, we need to have a conversation about this. You know you're not supposed to put your hands on your knees. I was just trying to be a good teammate and help you out of that. And she goes, yeah, I talked to her. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, oh good, okay, wow, good for you. What did she say? Well, let me read you what she wrote. No. I'm like, read? I'm like, so you communicated, but you did not converse. Conversation obviously needs to be hopefully face-to-face, but hey, now we have FaceTime, Zoom, Skype. At least that's better because I can see your eyes, hopefully, unless it's fuzzy. I can kind of read your body language a little bit. Or the least is I should be picking up the phone, at least hearing your voice and being able to ask questions. Text messages, group me. How many assistant coaches in here? How many of you are in charge of your group me? No. The only thing that group me should be used for on teams, if you don't know what group me is, like you can ask the person next to you, but it's an app that allows all the team members to all be in one, spot, and I text and it goes to all the team members, and then it just shows their conversation, meaning their communication with each other, not conversation. And it can turn into a hot mess. And now they've created their own secret. So I love how they're like, the coach must be in the group me, and then they create a whole separate group me under a completely different name. So usually there's the real and the fake group me, just so you all are aware of this. And that's where they're posting pictures they shouldn't post and say things they shouldn't say. But on the other one, it really should just be used to be able to communicate clear facts, not converse. It's, hey, practice has been moved from 5:15 to 5. That is communicating, and over that would be a useful medium to do that. But no, they're saying, hey, I didn't appreciate you saying F you. And so then it's funny because then she reads me the text message with attitude. And I was like, no, how about you send me what she wrote and I'm just going to read it, just neutral. No, but you don't know her. I know she like flipped her head and rolled her eyes. I'm like, what do you mean? You didn't see her. And she's like, I just know her. I just know how she was. So my thing is the conversation is where the relationship is. If you are not conversing, if you are not having conversations with your head coach, your assistant coach, your teammates, you have no relationship. None. And that is super scary because that is where the relationship begins. through hard or just conversation, not communication. So I know there's a red flag right away when the assistant coach is like, I don't talk to my head coach really. I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, I mean, I get text messages and stuff like that, and we email back and forth, but we don't talk. And I'm like, well, that we need to have a chat because there is no relationship there, none. I'll have guys, primarily Division I basketball guys, who are like, oh yeah, I'm dating like 3 girls at the time. I'm like, how's that going? And I'm like, you see them? Oh, no, we just text all day. I'm like, I hate to tell you, but you're not in a relationship. You're just communicating with 3 different girls who you think are women. But okay. Good, because you never see them. So, I mean, as far as we know, do you understand this? Difference between communication versus conversation. With no conversation, there is no relationship. And so if 2 of your players on your team refuse to speak to each other, make eye contact with each other, say hello to each other, be good, decent human beings, they don't have to like each other. I say this all the time. I tell teams, I don't care if you like each other, I need you to love each other. Okay? And I always say, yes, a team is like a family. Some coaches are like, I don't like that, I don't like calling the team a family. It fits perfectly. Families are dysfunctional. You don't get to pick your family. I love my brother, I don't like my brother, we don't have any common. I was a horrible sister, you probably shouldn't really like me, but if you ever did anything to my brother, I'd cut you. So it's just like our teams. Like, you didn't choose her, I chose her. I'm the coach, I actually picked her, you didn't pick her, you're stuck with her. We have conflict. Healthy families have conflict. Healthy families are healthy, meaning there's no healthy. Healthy is dysfunctional, just so you all know. I haven't met like a healthy, non-dysfunctional family. Like, you need some dysfunction because it's hard and it's conflict. It's exactly what a team is, if it's high functioning. But when I hear that players won't talk to this player, won't talk to that player, that is an issue. Or if assistant coaches aren't speaking to their head coaches, that also starts to scare me. So let's take some lessons from the skinny chef, okay? So if you see a chef that is skinny, because how many chefs, no offense to chefs, if anyone's a chef in here, I better be careful. Most chefs don't look like this. What do they look like if we're stereotyping? Round. Yeah, you're not even going to say it. You're just motioning because then no one can see you and they can't expose you. Okay, so rounder. And why? Why do you want to see a round chef? They gotta taste their food. If you see that, you're like, what's wrong, dude? You won't even eat your food, or dudette. Like, you're not even eating your own food. Right? So, like, you gotta take some lessons from the skinny chef. So you've got to be very credible. So if you're gonna have great conversations, or when you are gonna have conflict, you gotta kind of practice what you preach. Especially now. Back in the day, you would hear, I'm the adult, it doesn't matter what I do, you do what I say. That doesn't work anymore with this generation, and we now know that that's not really high functioning. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but we got to model what we want our athletes or our fellow coaches to act. So you've got to have some credibility. You got to have confidence. Oh gosh, I know not all of you. Like I'll just say it, one of my gift sets is to get up here and just talk. I could talk, okay? And so not all of us are like that, so I feel for coaches, and they sit and they're talking and they're like, so the other day you said, and their eyes are down, body language is in front, and I'm almost like, fake it! Fake it till you make it till you become it. Get up, get your shoulders up, make eye contact. If you have to read off your notes, I'm okay with that. But you leaning forward and you can see. And so if I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't believe what you're selling. Like you're telling this athlete maybe why they're not playing, but I don't buy that's why they're not playing. So I can only imagine what that athlete is thinking, or the student athlete is thinking. Or a head coach is working with assistant coaches, or an assistant coach, if you're like going in and you want to ask for a raise, or you want to ask a head coach a question, or you don't want to come off as I'm questioning the head coach, but I want to have an understanding, and you go in all meek and mild, well, that projects something. Clarity. You'll hear me say this later. Identify the issue. What is really the issue? I'm constantly going, nope, that's not the issue. Nope, that's not the issue. So I'll sit with assistant coaches. Celia Slater, who's over here, will come talk to you at the very end about True North Sports and camp. Elevate, and just so you know, her organization is what is like sponsoring this whole Art of Assistant Coach and puts this on. So thank you, Celia. But Celia, we'll get up and chat with you in a bit. But my thing with this is, what is really the issue? So when we're talking to assistant coaches and they're like, I'm just frustrated because the coach, and you go on this laundry list of things. And I'm like, that's great, but what's really the issue? What's really your issue? And a lot of times it's they don't share information with me, or I don't feel like I'm in the loop, or that's not a feel. I don't think I'm in the loop. If you saw my other thing, there's a difference between think, feel. So I don't think I'm in the loop, or I don't think the coach values me. My head coach values me. Is that really the issue? I would even break that more. Like, why do you think they don't value? What is really the issue? And a lot of times you'll get back to is the assistant coach doesn't value themselves, or doesn't feel confident in herself or himself. And so all of a sudden now, rather than running off and having this conversation with a coach, which is really convoluted and I can't understand and you're just running in circles, you got to get down to really what is the main crux of all these other things and be very clear. Even when you're talking to athletes, sometimes I'm looking at you all and I'm like, oh dear God, please just simplify. Simplify what's really the issue and be very clear. And then conviction, believe it. If you're wishy-washy or your eyes go down and you're shifty and all that other kind of stuff, like I'm not buying what you're selling, and I'm sitting in there trying to support you, and I'm getting anxious. I feel anxious. I'm starting to sweat for you. So again, let's take some lessons from the skinny chef. You need to be credible, confident, clear, and have conviction. This is going to help. Just rewind really fast. So you're like, how do I have clarity, conviction, confidence? Well, first, you need to know your own coaching philosophy, which Celia does a lot of work with coaches who really helps develop their coaching philosophy. Not a mission statement. This is like you're writing some pages. I know you're like, I don't want to go back to school. Well, you're writing some pages, and it changes. There are coaches who have many drafts of their coaching philosophy, and as they're adapting, especially with times and technology and different types of kids and parents, they're constantly rewriting their coaching philosophy, because that is what should be your moral compass, your true north. Okay? What is hard is what happens if your coaching philosophy doesn't match your club's philosophy or your school's philosophy. I'm very blessed now at a time where I can go to schools and pick and choose what coaches I want to work with or what programs I work with. Because if my morals, values, ethics don't match up with that coach's, I'm luckily or blessed enough that I can walk away if it doesn't fit. Not all of you are in that position, but it will start to create a lot of pressure and stress and tension if it's not matching up. Also then, what are your non-negotiables? So if you do find out, okay, how can I have conviction and have clarity when I'm being hamstrung because of the administration at our school or the board of directors with our club? And so it's also time to start to say, what are some of the non-negotiables that I am not willing to sacrifice to fit or keep this job? And then, of course, you must be willing to adapt. I've worked with some coaches recently that I don't really work with right now who are like, why should I have to adapt? I've had a lot of success. And I'm like, how's that working for you? I mean, I think the best coaches in the world in any sport are the ones that are like, what I did 20 years ago, like some of the messaging is the same, but my delivery is different, or how I go about it, or I'm spending more time building relationships. So that's the other thing to start thinking of is, am I willing to adapt? And you're adapting right now. If you're an assistant coach in here, you might have to adapt to your head coach. So some of this might be, what if you have a philosophy and your head coach's philosophy is different? That might not be the coach then to keep working for, because that tension starts to eat away at your soul sometimes. Just some quick issues, because I'm trying to get you ready. Like, I want to arm you for this role play stuff that's about to happen, okay? So I don't want to just throw you in. I wanted to give you something. So some of the keys when you're having conflict or thus a fierce conversation, as I said, address the real issue. Be authentic and accountable, and be present. Phones completely away. Ask the person that you're having the conversation to put their phones away. If their phone is in their hand, what's going on? If your phone is in your hand and someone is having a conversation or trying to have a conversation with you,
Not listening.
yeah, because where's your focus? Probably on your phone, especially the younger generation. They're going, oh, am I missing a call? Oh my gosh, I think I'm missing, oh my God, someone just posted something and I'm going to be the last one to like it. Okay, so I always ask just to put the phones away. Like actually I had mine up here for a prop, but really I shouldn't even see it. It's like some people will take it and turn it over like that's good, that's better. And so I've even gotten better. I've had just to put it away so it's not even in sight. So be present, like make eye contact. Okay, and then as we said right away in the beginning is to have a conversation, we have to be out from behind ourselves. We need to be vulnerable. That is the key. I say to student athletes all the time, the biggest step for mental toughness, the first step to be mentally tough is to be vulnerable. If you really want to be mentally tough, you have to be vulnerable because you have to be self-aware, you have to look deep inside of yourself, you have to really know what you're thinking and feeling. And just for you that haven't heard that, why are feelings important and emotions are important, is because we don't have an emotion without thinking something first. And for some of you in here, you're like, I don't want this touchy-feely stuff. But guess what? If you want performance to be high and consistent, emotions impact biomechanics and cognitive abilities. So if you're tense, okay, are you going to be able to pass the ball in an appropriate way? With flow? No. Or if you're tense and you're here and you receive a ball, it's like your body's a brick. So it's going to impact that kind of physical performance, but it also changes reaction time, memory, all of the cognitive functions that we have up here, that starts to slow down. So you might not like the emotion piece, but you better like it because it impacts all those other things, and we need to know emotions because if we know that, we can backtrack. Okay, you're angry. What are you thinking about? And I love it because they're like, I just told you I'm angry. I'm like, that's a feeling, not a thought. What are you thinking? That then is creating the response or the physiological or emotional response of anger. You all get this? You're like, no. Okay. All you can do is have one conversation at a time. Sometimes we start saying, I'll see here athletes like, oh, we don't want to talk about this multiple times. I'm like, you haven't had the first time. And you're already worried that you might have to talk about this 20 times. How about we just have one conversation at a time with the person or the group of people we need to have the conversation with? Conversations are the relationship, and a lot of times, I heard some of this when you were yelling stuff out for me, is that a lot of times we are trying to, in a conversation, figure out who's right. In conflict, like in conflict conversation. Well, I feel this, and I think this, and well, I feel and I think, and we're trying to figure out, well, who's going to win? A good conflict is everyone comes out and they're like, I kind of got my points across, but I also am like, oh. Like, no one typically is really thrilled or, yes! Beast moded that fierce conversation. I won. One win for Tiff. Like that shouldn't be, and I know you're like, but then why name it fierce? Because I told you, ask Susan Scott, it's fierce. It's honest, it's truthful, they're hard, they're challenging, they're difficult, they're uncomfortable. That's why it's fierce. And who owns the truth too? We could get really philosophical and deep. Like, does anyone of us own truth in here? You own your truth and what you see. You see this is white, someone else could see this as gray, someone else could, I don't know, something else could happen, and we all own the piece of the truth, but do we all really know the truth? It's really deep, I know. Also, once the conversation has ended, doesn't mean that it's over and it's ended. I think a lot of times people are like, whew, got that done and over with. And if someone else still needs a follow-up conversation, then we need to allow that to happen. So just because you think it's over, I know some of you who are married are like, tell me about it, Tiff. Especially if you're a head coach in here and you feel like, well, I already talked to my assistant about this. And they keep coming back. Well, then obviously something's not being relayed in the appropriate way, or I'm always like, if the conversation needs to keep happening, good, it's just going to deepen our relationship. And it's important to the person. If it's important to the person, it should be important to you, which is sometimes challenging, even for me, because I'll sit there and I have one-on-ones with student athletes, and I have to watch myself because they'll be talking, and I'm like, in my head, I'm going, are you kidding me? Is this really what you're upset about? Are you really talking about this? This is what you signed up for an individual session for, and I have all these other student athletes that want to meet up with this student, and this is what, and that's my dialogue, like, Tiff, stop. If it's important to them, then it needs to be important to me. So that's always a key, and that takes a lot of patience, and I'm not a high S, so that's big time adapt. Last piece of information, and then we're diving into scenarios. You ready? The scenarios will be fun. 1 minute opening statement. So how do you even start a conversation? Especially if it's someone that you don't typically have a lot of hard conversations with, or this is really good for assistant coaches and head coaches, it's really good for athletes. William Smith Athletics, who I work with, actually has this form up on their website. So when student athletes need to meet with a coach, or would like to meet with a coach, or they'd like to meet with me when I'm on campus, or even sometimes teammate to teammate will use this, is they fill out this 1 minute opening statement, send it to the coach or to me 24 hours before our meet, so that we can kind of go through it, and it's a great springboard. It has them take ownership of what's really going on, and it really helps the conversation get off to the good, rather than me being shocked that you feel a certain way, or that you're bringing this issue to me and I don't know how to handle it, because then what you need to do is say, hey, I've heard you, but I need some time to digest all this, and then we have to schedule another meeting, because I need time to think about it. So this kind of cuts that piece of it out, and also makes both parties, or allows both parties to work through their thoughts and their feelings with us, and name the issue. So first, what's the issue? Second, select a specific example, not 25, but I mean one. I find coaches, you can come up with 25 examples, and like student athletes are like, I don't know. I'm like, can you give me an example? I don't know. I don't remember. I just know. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to cut it. Your coach is going to want an example. Assistant coaches, your head coaches are going to want to know an example. So one example that illustrates the behavior situation that you would like changed. Then I want you to describe your emotions about it. Remember, emotions are not thoughts, so this is where you can use, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm pissed off. I want to strangle you is not an emotion. That's a thought, just so you all know. Clarify what is at stake. So if this is not resolved, what happens? What do you see happening in the future? Then you need to identify your contribution to the problem. If we're in relationships and we're having conflict, that means, you can have conflict just with yourself. But if we're having a conversation and it's a conflict kind of thing with teammates or whatever it may be, you have a part. It could be like, listen, this has been going on and I've been thinking about this for 3 weeks. And I didn't tell you, so I've been sabotaging you, because how can you make any changes or behavioral changes without you knowing? Athletes, literally, I'm like, your coach is not a mind reader. They're like, well, they just must know. No, they don't. Trust me. They don't know you're thinking that. Scary sometimes. I'm like, oh gosh, get ready. Here we go. They're going to tell us what they think. Hold on. It can be tough. But I find assistant coaches sometimes sabotage head coaches because they think their head coach should just know, and that's sabotage. So you've got to take some ownership in how am I part of this problem. Then you indicate your wish to how to resolve it, and then you invite your partner or the other folk to, and this is from Susan Scott. I did not come up with this, so I don't want to take credit. Invite them, and that's the scariest part, is now you're like, I'd love it if you would respond. And this is why it's so important that if both people had filled this out prior, or you would set it 24 hours in advance, and that party could then, teammate or coach or whatever it may be able then to read it and then fill out their own or responses to that. And so that it can be a really productive conversation. But if you spring the 1 minute conversation, 1 minute opening statement onto someone, I don't know. I always say, hey, I don't know what could happen. I just hope they don't hit you. I don't know. They could cry, they could run away, they could yell at you, they could punch you. I don't know how they're going to respond. That's the one piece of this we have no control over. 1 minute. It's 1 minute because you should be able to get through all 7 points in 1 minute. If it takes longer than 1 minute, you put too much fluff in it, or details that doesn't need to be around there. I shouldn't see any buts in there. I love you, but you're a bitch. Like, no, cut out the I love you and just get to what your thoughts are. You putting fluffy bunnies around things to try to soften the blow is not clarity. It confuses. You've been doing really well. I know how hard you've been working. I can see it. There might be some chances for you to get on the field now. I'm not really sure. Just tell them they're not playing still. Why are you lying to them? I know what that means. That means they're not playing, and you've already told me they're not playing, so that sounds to me like there's a chance. There's not a chance right now. So don't confuse it. All right. So there are 4 scenarios, and I'm going to let the whole group get into little clumps, or if, like I said, you're a lone wolf and you just want to sit there and close your eyes and meditate, you can do that. So I'm going to give you one, and we're just going to take a few minutes on each of them, and someone in here I would love to come up or take the little box and kind of go through some of their thoughts on how they would handle the scenario. Ready? These are very common ones. They get a little more interesting as we go. You find out a player is disgruntled about their playing time. I want you to think about this as if you are an assistant coach, do this as an assistant coach. If you're a head coach, you can think about it as a head coach. But for the assistant coaches out there, you are in the role of an assistant coach, okay? You find out a player is disgruntled about their playing time. They are constantly complaining to their teammates. How do you handle the situation as an assistant coach or the head coach? And there might be differences. This will be interesting. Think about this. I think some of you are like, I've dealt with this. I know how to deal with it. All right. We'll see. Go ahead. Do you want to help with this?
Testing.
Huh?
A little bit, but I'm fine. I slept good last night. I slept good last night. Yeah. That's late.
And then the field session, running around and sweating. That's why I've been this. I'm like, I don't have time to change.
No.
I'm just sweating.
You just be Tiff.
I'm sweaty and just
Yeah.
legs, I smell. Okay, I know we could talk forever. See how you just got the catch box? So if you want to be brave and vulnerable and practice what you preach, then have at it.
I'll do it.
Okay, there we go.
Oh my God.
Who is that back there? Oh God.
No, yeah, you can do it.
It's not easy to throw. Everyone thinks it's easy. It's not. Yeah.
All right, so this has happened to me before, and we've kind of have captains and team leaders. I'll bring myself and my assistant. We'll bring our team leaders in, and we'll say, hey, this has been brought to our attention, and we'll first see if this is something that the team leaders feel they can handle, because we've seen in the past, if they already have a relationship with this player, it's an easier pill for this complaining player to swallow as opposed to their coach coming in, and then they'll kind of feel like, oh, coach is picking on me. So a lot of times the team leaders will handle it, and they'll say, hey, coach, we got it. She was in her feelings. She understands what she was doing wrong. Or sometimes they might say, coach, it went in one ear, out the other. She's not listening to anything that we have to say. So then now myself and our assistant have to step in, and we'll bring that player in, and we'll try to show them examples of other players on the team who have been in her situation before. For instance, if it's a freshman, you know, hey, Susie Q, who's a senior, hadn't touched the field for the whole season, but she's still finding ways to add value to the team. Or Susie Joe is a senior. She was in your shoes as a freshman and sophomore. It's not something that happens overnight. If they still try to balk at it, well, I'm better than Susie Q or whatever. All right, let's go to film. You know, this is what we feel that you need to do better if you're complaining about your playing time. But the way, if you have an issue with your playing time, the person that controls that or makes those decisions is the coaching staff, not the teammates. So come to us, let's deal with it. Hopefully we'll resolve it, or we might just have to agree to disagree.
Interesting. I'll let someone respond. Oh, okay.
Here you go. I don't even have to throw it.
Fierce conversation. Here we go.
I love it. You open up with delegating this or encouraging your teammates and captains to deal with a player's conflict with the coach decision. And then at the very end, you said, this is a coach's responsibility and the coach should deal with it. So I would have got and I thought that was very confusing to ask teammates and players to explain why the coach is not playing you. And then at the end you said, but it's the coach's responsibility. So kind of was backwards. I was confused.
This is really funny because this goes to the disc. So those of you in here right now who are really uncomfortable with that, you're the S's because you're very sensitive and you want to go in your turtle shell and hide. The D's are like, yeah, hit him. And the I's are like, can't we all just have fun? I thought this was supposed to be light. And the C's are like, that's interesting. I wonder if they could put that into a PowerPoint, like, and justify why. Just tie in the disc profile. I think he wants to retort and respond.
That is, I really appreciate that feedback.
But I think you're...
Speaking of buts, my assistant has told me stop saying but and use and. And that's really helped me with conversations with my players. But,
it's harder than you think, but
it is very hard. In response to that, I'm not necessarily asking my team leaders to explain to her why she's not getting playing time. I'm trying to get my team leaders to take ownership of the culture of our team and to try to explain to her, okay, it's not about you, it's about the team. So whenever your opportunity comes, you need to be ready. If you have, if you feel you should be playing, then talk to the coach about it. So I probably use the wrong wording in that, but I appreciate that.
But there you are.
Sorry, and I appreciate that.
Do you want to know, and I'll keep going, but do you want to know how we make this really simple? And this is kind of a joke, but not, because I told my mom was a first grade teacher for years, and I thought, God, there's so many times I just want to hold the mirror up to some of these kids' faces or to the coaches' faces. So my mom's like, all right, I made you something for Christmas. It says, this is who is responsible for my playing time, and it's a mirror that just reflects back. But she then made little Velcro so I can change out and in little taglines. So if we really want to go there, but it's kind of true. I can make it really simple. You're complaining about your playing time, okay? Who's responsible for their playing time? Because I say there's no coach out there that is really trying to sabotage you. And especially in college, if you're good enough, coaches need to win. If you're good enough, you're going to play. Just saying. That's really just cutting to the chase. I think we talk too much. Like, yes, build relationships. And if you've built really good relationships with your players, it can be that. Frank, it's hard. So here's something. You want truth? And I know you're like, we could never do this anymore. Why not? You'll know this. So I've told this story. So Al Sand, who's just inducted into the Hall of Fame, first female coach to be inducted in the Hall of Fame last night. I played for her. This is how I was frustrated with this. She came up to me before a game. It was raining. The field was muddy. I was not fit my freshman half a sophomore year. And she comes up to me and said, Tiff, the field is muddy. You are already slow. This is going to make you slower. You are not playing today. You laugh. Does that sound like, yes, okay. So, truth. And I tell them, when I go back and work with a team, I tell them this. You say you want truth. That was truth, because what she allowed me to do was get pissed. I got pissed at her. Then I realized the issue was me, that I wasn't fit. And she was right. Of course, in my head, I was also like, doesn't it slow everybody else down? But okay. That was not the point. Yeah, this is my day. We neutralize everyone else. Not everyone else is slower. Right. No, just me. And I could either pout. It did. It helped me look in the mirror. It also allowed me an opportunity to give myself time to be a good teammate and to be supportive, because at least I wasn't on the sideline going, why the heck am I not going in, and saying all these other things about her. And it allowed me time to be like, no, I have two choices here. I mope, which is definitely not going to help, or I'm going to be a really good teammate. And then I don't ever want to feel like this again. So what do I need to do? What is my issue that I need? So why am I complaining about playing time? Really, and getting that player down to that point, which a lot of that has to do with it within them. And so it's helping them down that path. So we could go on and on and on and on about this, and you're all probably having 80,000 things. Be direct. A lot of you talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and give reasons and but and this, and I'm like, I'm lost. Like just, I don't, like, what is it really? Just cut to the chase. 1 minute. That should have been in 1 minute. 1 minute, hit it. What's the issue? You're complaining about your playing time. That's not part of our culture. And then give an example, and then go right through. 1 minute. Simplify it. Now you can follow up, but I get confused. I'm like, wait, what are we really addressing here? Okay, ready for two? Let me see which one. All right. You do not agree with the decision your administrator or director of athletics has made, and it's adversely impacting your team. What would you do or say? So some of you are maybe not. You might be in club. Think of it as your board of directors, DOC, whatever it may be. Go ahead.
And then maybe a couch, maybe a couple of heads of couches with empty for these, and just pick off and just stick.
That's awesome.
I was like, Sue would love this, because think about when you're
That is so awesome.
like I am,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
whatever, and then have
That's cool. That's cool. So, what is your relationship?
And I was like, I don't take that personally. So maybe something happened with athletics or something.
Yeah. I was just curious.
Yep. Yep. How about
Okay. I'm just giving you flavor and taste of this. Here's a great example of, just before we dive into this, a gentleman just walked up and said, isn't the real issue that that player couldn't go talk about playing time with the coach? Like, I don't know if it were that simple. I mean, I work with some great coaches who have created an environment and a culture where they, I mean, literally have built really strong relationships where if you can't go talk to that coach, I don't know who you can talk to. But what, like I said, what if the fierce conversation really needs to happen with that player? And deep down, they know the reason they're not playing is because they're not fit or they haven't done the work or they're just not good enough. It's easier rather than do that is to lash out, is to blame the coach. So why don't I go in and talk to the coach? Because I really don't want to ask the questions I already know the answers to that I don't want to really admit to. So it was a great point, but I also do this all the time, and this is the number one thing that comes up is this complaining about playing time behind backs, behind closed doors with parents and all this kind of stuff. And this is with some coaches that have created an amazing thing, and ultimately it's because it's hard for the athlete or they don't have the skill set to look within and have that fierce conversation with themselves. So thank you, sir, whoever you are, for bringing that up, but that would be a reason why, even if you're a great coach, why they might not come and have that conversation with you. They need the fierce conversation with themselves. Okay, anyone want to take a risk on this one? The S's are like, heck no. Don't worry, the super duper I in the room will, don't worry. Right here.
Oh, that was easy.
William Smith grad, here we go, don't blow it.
I would obviously meet with the athletic director and I would ask them, well, because I'm a college coach, so it would be an athletic director, and I would ask them their reasoning behind it and why they made the decision that they did and what the big picture is to understand why this is ultimately the best for the entire athletic department, and then think through the process, and then if that then leads to me expressing some of my concerns and advocating for my team and how it does negatively affect it, so that we can have a conversation to make sure that we're still fitting underneath the overall umbrella of the athletic department and what's best for every single team and every student athlete, while still advocating for my team.
Huh. Go ahead, go get her. Good job, but go get her, way to take a risk.
Anybody?
You can point out strengths, limitations to that thought process. Oh, there we go, yes, women, step up, ladies, I love it.
I think one of the limitations to that is, what if the answer still doesn't change? You know, what if you advocate for your team, but the answer never changes and you're still in a situation where you're not getting what you truly feel you need for your program because of something that your athletic director of coaching believes. And I think that can lead to, you know, that idea of being able to end a conversation and move forward from it is a good thing. But if you are then, as say you go and the situation creates something where you lose and you can all of a sudden put an excuse on, you know, well, we weren't set up for success, and you can blame your athletic director's decision making, that can be a dangerous, dangerous moat to cross, I think. So I think, you know, that's what I would say would be a limitation to something like that. But I think it's always good to have those conversations in that way, because it shows that you're willing to listen and willing to explore and hear what they have to say, while also, and that gives you the open door to then convey what you feel too. So I think it's a productive way to go about it. My concern is, what if you still don't get the answer that you want?
I love it, you're like, I think it's productive, but.
Oh, I'd use the but, and.
Good job. So this is tough. Oh, someone else, good, go. I'd rather hear from you than me, good.
Okay, so I just came from the trust session.
Excellent. Good job. Way to interweave and apply information.
My thought process when I saw this was, it would depend on, do I have that trust in my administrator or athletic director? And if I do, and I feel like that trust is there, or I think that trust is there, that I know that decision was made either with my best interest in mind, because I trust that person, or it was made and the consequence was maybe unanticipated. So I think I would start the conversation with, this decision has affected our team in this way. Was that an unintended consequence of this? And if it was, is there a way we can fix it? And if it was an intended consequence, then why do you think that is necessary for our team? So I would hope that I'm not working there if I don't have that trust in that administrator. But I think that's where it would all start for me. And when we read this, his immediate reaction was, go talk to the athletic director. And my first thought was, I'm having to deal with this conflict that this decision is made with my team. And then that led me to, I would go talk to the administrator as an advocate. You guys need to cool it while we find out what the actual story is before you blow up Instagram about how we're getting screwed over by this decision. He or she hates women's sports, or whatever the decision was.
And yeah, there's a lot of things to think about. I think if you are going to talk to the athletic director, pulling up the athletic philosophy and saying how the decision possibly isn't in line, or that not their decision, but the decision, be careful not to personalize it, but the decision that was made, in your opinion, doesn't fall in line with what the philosophical statement says and what your philosophy is on how to handle things. You have to be really careful with your team, because you cannot throw your director of athletics under the bus. I find it happen all the time. You want to get fired, throw your director of athletics under the bus. Well, my hands are tied. Can't do anything. My boss, I don't know how, I love how you don't even call it director of athletics. You're like, well, my boss, like they don't know who that is. And trust me, because I've heard that go, is like, well, our director of athletics just doesn't like us. I'm like, why do you think that? Well, our coach said that he had to make, or she had to make this decision because they told him to, and look how this has affected us. And then watch out. So one of the coaches said, well, is it really a hill to die on? And that's the other thing, is like, the decision was made. Is it something that you feel important enough that you go, or do you go and manage your team and the conflict that is now going on your team? But be very careful who to cast blame on or responsibility from, because that, guess who's going? Not the director of athletics, probably. But it is sticky. This is why being a college coach, I think, is one of the hardest professions, because there's so many landmines that you need to navigate and relationships you need to build, and so many things that are out of your control that can impact whether or not you stay if it turns into wins, losses. So it's very challenging. Celia is phenomenal with this stuff, by the way. So if you ever want someone to manage it, well, I think she has a unique perspective, because she was a long time women's basketball coach and has a lot of friends who are directors of athletics or in administration, and so she has worn a lot of hats, so can give you a lot of different perspectives. I was never an administrator. I was just a coach right out of college. So I just want to say that I think you offer that because you can get, have some insight into maybe decisions that are being made, or, how things are being navigated. So there's two other scenarios that we're not going to get to that are fun, that you'll have if you want the PowerPoint, because they're fun. I think these are great. If you have an assistant coach friend group, these are always fun to do hypotheticals, maybe going back and taking them to your head coach, and even if they're not issues yet, maybe having a discussion with your head coach about how you would handle these situations. This is a good one. You are, maybe this one. You're an assistant coach and you are concerned that your head coach's language is detrimental to the emotional and psychological well-being of the team. What do you say and do? This is always interesting. I use this one for team captains, and it's just interesting because I make them, because at first they start going off, and I'm like, well, how about we explain what is detrimental to the emotional and psychological well-being? What does that even mean? Well, they said that I wasn't very good and that I wasn't going to play, and I'm like, is that true? Okay, I don't know how that's detrimental, but okay. And so it's interesting how they even define that, or how some of you in here would define that. And then the last one, this is a biggie. I was at a mental health panel. This is a huge one, is one of your players has severe mental health issues. They are one of the best players and well liked by the team, but it's beginning to hurt their performance. What steps do you take as an assistant coach versus maybe head coach? Because a lot of times you hear things that the head coach doesn't hear or find things out. So sometimes you're in a very unique position. So those are some, and to give Celia the last 2 minutes so that she can talk a little bit about True North and about Camp Elevate that will be coming up in the end of May.
Okay, so I'm not going to talk about camp right this second. What I want to talk to you all about is, are you going to learn how to deal with conflict in an hour class at the soccer convention? Hell no. Not just no, but hell no. So what I want to say to you all is this: coaching equals conflict. And you have to figure out how to navigate through that and build that skill set to navigate through conflict. And here's the other thing that really helps you develop your skill set with conflict, is having a circle of people around you that you truly do trust to walk through the scenario and to practice the conversation before you have the conversation so that you know that you're really ready for that conversation. I grew up in a home where conflict was not modeled very well for me. And I don't know about your life story, but my life story was that I did not have, my parents would argue like crazy. So when I felt that argument, I would go running for my room, okay? So I was conflict adverse. I never wanted to deal with conflict. So if you're a person who is afraid of conflict and you feel conflict adverse, then you have to find a way to build those particular skill sets. Because if you cannot do conflict, you're going to have a tough time coaching. It is one of the most important skill sets that you have to develop as a coach. Just think about it. You start that starting lineup, you are walking into conflict. So how do we think about conflict? What are the resources that you have to learn more and to deal with conflict? The thing about it that I have learned is that the only way around it is through it. And what we have to learn around conflict is getting comfortable in the uncomfortable. To be comfortable in the uncomfortable. Because many times as coaches, and I'm going to tell you, I have seen coaches, I've been working with coaches for a lot of years, and I'm going to tell you that when you stuff it, when you stuff that conflict, then eventually that energy is going to come out. One way or another, you're going to blow up, you're going to lose it. So when you feel that conflict and you start stuffing those conflicts and you don't deal with them and you don't deal with them and you don't deal with them, you're either going to get physically sick, or you're going to get burned out, or you're going to lose your joy in your job or your relationship, wherever you're not dealing with conflict. So to start, I would highly recommend that you read Susan Scott's book, Fierce Conversations, which is a great book on conflict that she mentioned and pulled a lot of these resources from. But I'm telling you, the coaches, you have to find your voice in conflict and to say what you need to say in a non-shaming and non-blaming way to the best of your ability. And it is an art, but you have to have your voice in it no matter what. This is the people part of coaching. We're dealing with human beings, right? You're a human being, but you have to figure out a way to say what you need to say and to get it out. All right? So in closing, many of you have heard me talk about camp, and we'd love to have you all out there. There's many resources out there for you. If you're a female coach, you could go to the NCAA Women Coaches Academy. All right? You should find out about that. Google that if you're a female coach. If you're a male or a female coach, you can come to Camp Elevate, regardless of the level you coach. And right now we're offering $50 off with the promo code SOCCER2019. I have coupons somewhere up here. All right? Any questions? Thank you all. Oh yeah, we got a question. Oh, that's a whole nother session. So
Yeah, we did a whole nother session. If you want to ask me, like, up here, that'd be my pleasure.
yeah,
So-
I know it's happening.
Yeah.
That's a huge
Thank you,
topic.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.